Meeple Nation Podcast, episode 463, two-player feedback episode.
Welcome, citizens of Meeple Nation. For the next 30 minutes, sit back and enjoy.
Meeple Nation Podcast is sponsored by GameToppersLLC.com. Go over to their website, check out their beautiful product. They have toppers that can go on most any table. They have mats that can also fit on those tables or fit within the toppers you get. Accessories galore, goblet holders, cup holders, bit trays. They have dice towers that attach to the side of the table. When you drop your dice, they can either go into that little corral, or if you like it to go all over the table, they can just roll right onto the table. All sorts of beautiful mats. Those mats are high quality and amazing. If you're looking for anything game related that will upgrade your night every night, I would suggest your first stop be GameToppersLLC.com.
We are the hosts of Meeple Nation. I'm Douglas Stewart.
And I'm Nathan Howard. We're a little lonely today.
Dave's helping a friend tonight, and Andy's taking care of his family.
And Logan's working.
So it's just the two of us. There's a song about that.
Just the two of us. I don't remember the rest of the words.
I don't either. We shouldn't start things we can't finish.
That is for sure.
Dear citizens of Meeple Nation, there are times when you must ask yourself what would cause a group of fun-loving, intelligent, handsome, like, if we're being honest, incredibly attractive, almost embarrassingly good-looking middle-aged men to sit around a table and record a podcast? Well, let me tell you, if we find those guys, we'll let you know. But for us, the answer is you. We do this because we love games and we want to interact with other people who love games just like you. And to help us facilitate that interaction, we've created a website, meeplenation.com, where you can go to hang out with us. You can check out all of our episodes, read our blogs, learn more about us, and catch up on our socials, as the kids would say. Is that how the kids say it? The socials? Is that what they are?
I haven't been a kid for a long time.
Yeah. Me neither. But it's all there. You can find our links at meeplenation.com. You can also find a link to our Patreon page. We are so grateful for those who contribute financially to the podcast and would love to earn your patronage as well. Please help us get to know you better by emailing us at meeplenation@gmail.com. We welcome your feedback, cool stories, anecdotes, witty banter, any other chatter you wish to throw our way. Thank you for being here. We love all of our listeners and can't wait to hear from you.
This week, we are changing up our programming.
Sure. Yeah,
And
let's go with that.
We changed our last episode. Instead of each of us picking a game, we collectively picked our favorite games associated with the theme that we were talking about. And with this one, instead of picking just one two-player game that we would go on and on about, we decided we would pose the question out there to our socials. Look at me being a hip kid.
Nice. I love it.
We asked the question, what are your favorite two-player games? And so we're going to go through, hopefully, all of those, but if not, we apologize for any of those that we missed. But we're going to go through those and share our combined joy for those games, or maybe we'll find some games to add to our list. There are so many games out there, and this is a great way for us to hear your sides and your picks.
I was actually really excited to see the feedback that came through on Facebook in particular. I know there's going to be a lot of these games that I'm going to add to my list. People threw out a bunch of games that I have not played yet, some that I've heard about, some that I haven't heard about. I'm super excited. This kind of gives me a good direction when it comes to looking at some future two-player games to bust out.
And I always make the comment that I don't play very many two-player games, but my wife and I played well over 600 games last year, and we are full steam ahead this year. In the month of February, we are already over 150 games that we've played this year, just her and I.
That is awesome. That is incredible. Thank you, BGA, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, that and it is real life, too. BGA, I think, is the catalyst for it. The opportunity to share those experiences, to have those times together. It was really great when she came to BryceCon with us. We had talked it up so much the last time. Lydia, your wife, was there. Dave's wife was there. And we had some very good times last year. And we had some exceptional times this year. It wasn't quite the late night, out of control laughter like last time.
One thing I noticed, there were more spouses with us this year, which means there was more, shall we say, voice of reason.
Maybe.
And some earlier bedtimes than there normally would have been. Yeah, when left to our own devices, I think we make poor choices. But those poor choices lead to some late nights and some rather raucous times. So I don't know which is better. But it was great to have spouses there. I'm glad Cheryl was able to come. And super glad that you two have been rocking it with some 2-player games. That's really cool.
We sat down with Chris to play a game of Reef at BryceCon. I was excited to hear her interact with Chris from Arizona, who we had just met there when he sat down at the table with us. She was talking about playing games and what games she liked. I was just eating it all up. I appreciate her support for me and for what we're doing. It was just really nice to be able to hear her as we were explaining Reef to this guy and her throwing out, well, have you played this game? Have you played this game? It's a little bit like that. I'm just going to sit back and watch this happen.
Don't feel like you're dragging her along anymore. She's a full-blown member of the community.
If I could get her to show up on a regular game night, even if we were playing casual games, that would be next level. Getting her to show up where she feels more comfortable is 100% awesome.
It's good to have goals.
It is. We're going to start off our discussion with Levi. When he was asked, what are your favorite 2-player games or games that play best with 2 players, he suggested Patchwork, Azul, and Res Arcana. We talked a little bit about Patchwork and my love for Patchwork, and I think Azul is great as a 2-player game. Res Arcana, I'm not 100% sold on this game yet. I think I got to stop playing with Richie.
Yes.
And then I might enjoy the game a little bit more. So maybe I should try this with Cheryl, except for I think this might be a little bit too complex for her.
Don't burn her out, Nathan.
If the game gets too complex, the lights go out in London. And
No, this is a great pick, though. All 3 of these games that Levi mentioned, I think are awesome. And Res Arcana, I will say, the other thing you need to do, aside from not playing it with Richie, is try to play it at 2 players. It actually is an excellent 2-player game. The thing about Res Arcana is those turns take just a moment. A lot of your turns, it's just tapping this card, taking this resource, I'm done. When you have to wait for it to go through 2 or 3 other players at the table before it gets around to your next quick action, it can make that sort of arbitrarily seem like the game's taking too long. But when it's 2 players and you're just going back and forth, boom, 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 it feels very satisfying. Res Arcana is just a great engine building game anyway. When you can sit down with another person and just go, I really like that. That's an awesome pick. And so is Azul. I think Azul for kind of the same reasons. Those are awesome picks for 2-player games.
we got the chance to play Res Arcana again. My most recent play of it anyways was at BryceCon. I keep feeling like we keep coming back to BryceCon, but it's fairly fresh in our mind. And there was a lot of games that were played that weekend. Sure. But yeah, we played with Kyle and Richie and you and I. Richie scored 16 points. Kyle scored 12 points. You scored 8 points and I scored 7 points. It's a game that Richie really enjoys and he's very analytical. He, Dave, and Dennis, and I haven't played with any of the other holidays in that family, but they are all very analytical and can see things that maybe I don't. And it's very obvious in Res Arcana.
Then you compound that by the fact that Res Arcana is just one of those games. No 2 cards or components are the same. If you've played it a bunch of times, that familiarity really gives you an edge when it comes to playing. So you kind of combine that analytical mindset with the fact that he's played it a lot and is very good at it. Richie's hard to beat. So, if you ever want to be kind of challenged when it comes to that game, he's the one to go play it with.
And I've played 2 players with Richie, and that was actually a very close game. But with the introduction of the 2 expansions that we played with also that day, adding into Richie's experience with the game, it made it a very large point gap. Exactly what you said, that in a 2-player game, those turns are so much tighter, those turns are so much cleaner, and the game, I feel, is very much more enjoyable as a 2-player game.
Yeah, so thanks for the feedback, Levi. Those are excellent choices.
So surprise guest, Dave is through helping his friend, and Dave has joined us. Be it a little bit late, but we are glad that he's here.
Glad to be here.
Oh, yeah. Bringing some of that Dave bass to the podcast. I love it.
Dave, we are continuing our discussion. Our next feedback is from Russell. Russell suggested Undaunted Stalingrad, which we talked a little bit about last week. And he said, or Normandy or North Africa. These are games that sound really exciting. You talked about them quite a bit last week.
Yep. Number 2 favorite 2-player game of all time for me currently is the Undaunted series. I've played mostly North Africa. It's absolutely wonderful. One of the things that stands out about it versus Normandy is that you have jeeps and tanks. On top of your normal platoon units, you actually have vehicles that you can control that do some additional things. Thematically and artistically, I think it's just a little bit better too. Undaunted Stalingrad, what a fantastic 2-player game. And this is one we all need to play. I will gladly teach this one when we get some time to sit down and play it. It's excellent.
When we talked last week, I had mentioned this is a game that my brother would love. Since last week, I actually reached out to him and asked if he had played these, and he was super excited to get my feedback on them. And I'm like, well, I haven't played them yet. So he does really enjoy these. I mean, it's right up his alley. So I was not surprised to hear that he had such a great enjoyment with them, but he strongly encouraged me to take the chance to play them. So I'm even more excited now for a chance to get those to the table.
Next on our feedback list was Jody, who suggested that Seven Wonders Duel, Splendor Duel, Jaipur, Lost Cities, and Azul. A lot of love for Azul on this list. Azul's awesome.
100%, yeah.
Great pick. Seven Wonders Duel is, I think, becoming rather synonymous with two-player games. I think it's at the top of most people's list. If you were to say, hey, just rattle off some two-player games, I think a lot of hobby gamers would rattle off Seven Wonders Duel. It would be right at the top of their list.
Seven Wonders Duel is quickly rising to the top of my list of two-player games. It might be because you keep letting me win, but...
Yeah, this is one Dave and I've been playing on BGA together.
Yeah.
And,
is it on BGA?
Yeah, I keep trying to go for that stupid military victory, and I shouldn't. It's just so tempting. You get those little military shields dangling in front of you, and you're like, I could do that. and then the game ends, and it's like, I didn't do it, and Dave totally schooled me.
It's a great game. I'm not a fan of Seven Wonders. The original Seven Wonders game, it's okay. I mean, I'll play it, but it's not top of my list.
Same. I feel exactly the same.
But yeah. I really love this one.
My favorite Seven Wonders game is Architects, and that plays exceptionally well at two players. Very much enjoyed that one. I guess I did know that this was on BGA, so this is something I'll have to sit down and teach my wife first. Shouldn't be that difficult since it's still Seven Wonders. Get her to play that, and so we can add that to our continued play list as well.
Splendor Duel was also one that was mentioned. I haven't had a chance to play that one yet, but that one's kind of on the hotness right now. I guess a lot of people are really liking that. I've heard several people that I've talked to about that game say that they like it better than the original Splendor.
Oh, really?
I guess it's quite good.
And Splendor's on my two-player list that my wife and I play a lot of. Splendor Duel makes sense to play. I knew this episode was going to get expensive as I start to make a list of two-player games that I need to add to the library. Splendor Duel is definitely on that list.
So also mentioned was Lost Cities, which we did talk about in previous episodes, but I think it's kind of a travesty that we didn't mention Jaipur. Jaipur is an excellent two-player game.
It really is.
It's a classic.
This is a game that Richie and I used to play a lot of on yukata.de. It's a great game. I love that game.
Yeah, so thank you, Jody. Those are awesome picks.
Elena, thanks for the feedback. I see the first one that Elena pointed out was Agricola, All Creatures, Targi, Ticket to Ride, San Francisco, a couple more votes for Jaipur and Azul, and Backgammon.
Backgammon. I loved Backgammon. You know what? I could go for some Backgammon.
That's a game that I have never actually played.
Oh, really? If we busted out the board right now, I don't think I could teach you how to play it. It has been that long, but I remember I loved it.
The set that I'd seen had the nice velvet-lined dice cup to help reduce the sound. Watching people shake it, and they're all cool.
Backgammon is becoming very similar to Crokinole in that way. There are people who have spent hundreds of dollars building very elaborate, very nice backgammon boards. And that's awesome. I would love to get out some old school backgammon.
I actually had one of my backgammon copies out today, but not to play backgammon.
You were using it to stop a chair from rocking?
No, I use it as storage for a bunch of dice. Richie and Porter came over to play test a game that he's working on. And so I grabbed my set for my dice. But every time I do it, I have that exact same thought. I would love to play backgammon. I have only played it once years and years and years ago, but it is a really fun game.
I'm going to take issue with one of the games mentioned here. Ticket to Ride San Francisco. I'm going to give my love to Ticket to Ride London. If we're going to pick these small box Ticket to Ride games, I think the London version is really, really good. It's hard to beat double-decker buses.
The only one I've played is New York. I only have the taxis. I do enjoy that you've condensed this Ticket to Ride to a small little game. Great to bust out for two players. It scratches that itch for Ticket to Ride. I'm playing a lot of Ticket to Ride, just two players, that smaller board, and that quicker time frame. Yeah. So I love these small games, these small Ticket to Rides.
100%. Lydia and I went through a stretch where we were playing Ticket to Ride London 3 or 4 times a week, and we got to the point where we could play a game of this in under 20 minutes. I like those small box implementations of Ticket to Ride, and I really like them at 2 players, so that's awesome. Have you guys played Targi?
I have not played Targi.
It's awesome, actually. Really good. Next time we do 2-player games, I will bring my copy over and teach that one to you. It uses a really cool mechanism. Each player has 3 of the targi. They're like your workers that you're going to place out on this board. You're going to place them out on the outside spots of the board that forms a grid. And then what you do is you look at where your targi workers intersect on that grid, and they get to take either the resources or other cards from that spot. The kicker is you can't play your worker in the same column or row as one of your opponents. So those spots run out really quickly. But Targi has some really awesome worker placement, fun strategy, set collection, and resource management that makes it a really fun 2-player game.
I actually own this game. It's on my shelf. I picked it up at a thrift store, but never actually played it.
And Agricola All Creatures is going on my list of games that I know nothing about and am intrigued.
Agricola is one of my all-time favorite games. Richie, Dennis, both my brothers, they absolutely love this game as well. Dennis will just sit and watch people play tournaments professionally of this game. He does that with several games, but this is one of his favorites. Anything Agricola, I am excited about. Looking into this game, it actually has me even more excited than typical because it's designed specifically for 2 players and it's only about the animal husbandry. So you don't have to worry about all the other things that you normally do in Agricola.
The misery part of farming?
You're not wrong.
No, I'm not.
The animal breeding portion of this game in Agricola is the one thing that I am worst at. And so I am really excited to play this because I might figure out how to do that part, and it might help me in my regular Agricola.
So our next comment comes from Alan, who used to be a neighbor of mine, and he and his wife, as their family started to grow, needed a bigger home, and so they have moved on to bigger and greater things. And I had no idea that he was a gamer. And he mentions that their favorite games to play together are Dungeon Draft and Doomlings. Now, Doomlings I'm not familiar with at all, but Dungeon Draft is a game that I've looked at and considered a couple of times, but have not picked up. It's a game where players are dealt quest cards and they're trying to select the best quests. And it's a drafting game as well, where players are also drafting cards. This is a game that I've thought about picking up, that I've passed several times. With Alan's suggestion, maybe I should try to pick it up. As a 2-player game, that might be something that I can get my wife to play.
Our friend Dave suggested Lost Cities again and Othello. Othello is a game that I used to play over and over all the time. I always looked for opportunities to play this game. I had some friends and family who owned the game, and so I got to play it in those instances. And then I didn't play it for a very long time until I found an app that I was able to play. But I think Othello is absolutely a classic 2-player game.
Othello is, again, another classic game that I have never played.
And it falls into almost the exact same category for me as Backgammon does. One that I've played and remember and kind of exists in that same brain space as something that I played clear back in the day. And add that one to my list of nostalgic games I need to pull out and relearn. Andrew said that he likes to play Seven Wonders Duel, Caper Europe, Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition, Orleans, and Century Golem.
Bonnie Russell suggests Chinese checkers, chess, and rummy. I haven't played Chinese checkers in a long time. As a kid, I loved that. I thought that was a great game. And checkers, I haven't played checkers in forever, and there's probably a good reason for that. Some people might like checkers, and I'm sorry to the checker community out there, but apparently I have a checkered past with checkers. And Rummy itself is a game I've never played, but I've played very many Rummy-style games.
Growing up, we played a lot of variations of Rummy. Never Rummy itself, but there's 100 Rummy-adjacent games out there.
I had the same experience with Rummy-esque games with some cousins that we didn't get to see super often, but whenever we did, that was one of our favorite things to do was bust out a game of 6-hand Rummy. I loved it.
A couple of years ago, we have a neighbor who's also a really good friend, and he built several of the neighbors a homemade chess, checkers, and Chinese checkers board. So it had the grid to play chess and checkers on the one side. And then if you flipped it over, he had hand bored out all those little holes for the marbles for Chinese checkers. And it's this very beautiful hardwood set that he handmade. And that has a special place in my game room. We bust that out every now and then and get some of those classics to the table. The kids like playing it. So we still get those games out thanks to my neighbor who made us that set.
Yeah, it's a treasured thing.
Yeah, I had honestly kind of forgotten. Chinese checkers was one I played a lot as a kid. Do you remember Chinese checkers that you could go pick it up at Walmart and it came in that like really awful tin You pulled the tin off, all the marbles were inside of it, and they were always rolling around. So when you went and got it, they were just sloshing back and forth and making a lot of noise. You could hear somebody coming a mile away. When your sister wanted to play Chinese checkers, you could hear it was like, run, she wants to play. But you take that tin off, you pull the marbles out, flip it around, and then you had sort of that little indented tin. That was kind of what I grew up with. Playing with a little more style these days with that homemade board.
You know, you kind of say dated yourself, but maybe you dated me and Nathan, because Walmart really wasn't a thing when I was growing up.
First time I experienced Walmart, I was probably 15 years old.
Sorry, I should have said Kings.
Kmart.
Kmart.
Reverend Jonathan said, Cribbage, another classic game that I've never played. Scopa, which I'm not familiar with at all.
Never heard of it.
Patchwork, and Memoir 44. Memoir 44, I've played once a long time ago. I really enjoyed it. World War II conflict, player versus player conflict. Great game.
This is a Days of Wonders game, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and Days of Wonder does a pretty good job with their production. I have not played this, but we actually have a friend that we all play games with from time to time, Kyle, who really loves this game and has offered to teach it. So we ought to take him up on it and learn how to play Memoir 44.
Sounds great.
Just recently, my brother Fritchett and his kids have really been getting into cribbage, playing it quite a bit. I don't remember where he said he got the set, but he got a set somewhere and looked up how to play it, and they've just really enjoyed it. And it's a good game.
So Scopa is a traditional Italian card game, been around since 1600, game that has seen a shelf or two, but there's that for you.
Mark suggested Azul and Lantern.
Lantern's a game that I have, and I've only played it a couple of times. I got it when it first came out. It reminds me a lot of Patchwork, where you're trying to make the patterns of the lanterns in the lake, get points from them that way. This is something I need to get my wife to play again, because I think this is a game that she would very much enjoy. Lanterns is a great suggestion.
Yep, and yet again, more love for Azul. Alex suggests Seven Wonders Duel. So there's that one again, too.
Jared suggested Viticulture, which is a game that I've played twice. We played at BGG Con this last November, and for some reason, the rules in this game just don't stick in my head. Currently playing a game on BGA.
It took us a while to start because I wasn't even ready to pick my mama and my papa until I talked with Doug and went over the rules again.
Yeah. Viticulture is really good. I think it does take a few times playing it to kind of get those rules to kind of solidify in your head. And then if you start adding in some of the Tuscany content, it gets a little more complicated. Interestingly enough, this is one I have not played at 2 players. I think that's the only player count I have not played it at. I've played it solo, and I've played it at 3, 4, 5, and 6 players, but never at 2. So I'll have to give that a shot.
Knowing the game now, having played it a few more times, I'd be really interested in doing it 2 players. It seems like it could be a totally new experience.
Because if you remember the board, you have all those worker placement spots, and they increase. You get more spots per players. And so at 2 players, you would just have 1 spot per location. So just first come, first serve, unless you wanted to use your grande worker. So that could actually be really interesting. I bet the strategy really switches up.
That's a very valid point, is that in these games that go up to a higher player count, there is very much a strategic difference playing the same game at 2 players as opposed to playing it at that higher player count, 4, 6, however high it goes, which is something I enjoy. A lot of designers are also trying to implement the solo rules in a lot of their games, which also gives you a chance to explore the game with a different strategy. Terraforming Mars is one that comes to the top of my list, where the solo variant allows you to experience the game, but it is nothing like a multiplayer game.
And not to take us too far down that rabbit hole, but it is interesting to see how player count can change the strategy. I'll just say this. The only thing that I have no interest in at all whatsoever are games that force that 1 or 2 player game to work by introducing some sort of bot character. Not an AI. It's not like a solo mode. It's not like the automata system for Wingspan or some of those. It's just like a false player at the table that when it gets to them, you do a few upkeep things to try to balance the game out. I really struggle with games like that. So as long as it's not doing that, I'm happy to try any of these games at any player count.
I think we're going down this rabbit hole. I think one game that does do that and does it well, that I've enjoyed anyways, is actually Dune Imperium. You play Dune Imperium as a 2-player game. It introduces that 3rd player bot. I think that's needed because you run into, we were talking about viticulture where there's more places that are open. And if that Dune Imperium did not have that player there filling up some of those places, it would lose all of its appeal. But normally I 100% agree. There's some Autonoma with Great Western Trail that I think is very blasé. Even in the Autonoma in Wingspan is not my favorite. It's better than that bot player for sure.
Jenna said she loves Fort, Raptor, Onitama, Rum and Bones Second Tide, and Caper Europe.
Yeah, Jenna, these are awesome suggestions. I also think Fort plays really well at 2 players. I've only played this a few times, but it does play good at 2 players. I have not played Raptor, and I'm intrigued. I've heard a lot about Raptor. It's kind of a scientists versus a raptor and her babies. I've heard that it's good. Onitama is a fantastic game. This is a Japanese-themed game where 2 players go head-to-head, and I believe they play as samurai or ninjas, something of that ilk, and you basically have strategy cards, and the idea is that I have 2 strategy cards in front of me. I pick one and execute its ability on the board, and then I have to pass it to my neighbor. So it gives them the option of having that with one of their cards, and then when they take theirs, they have to pass whatever card they execute to you, giving you the opportunity to use that to counter as well. And you just kind of go around and around until the victory condition's met. But that's an awesome one. Also has a fantastic app. There's a really good app for Onitama.
I am not familiar with either of the others, Rum and Bones Second Tide or Caper Europe. Are either of you guys?
I have a copy of Caper that I picked up at BGG 3 years ago. It's been mentioned a couple of times now, so it's one that I should consider brushing off.
Yeah, we'll have to wipe the dust off of that. Christopher mentions Cribbage, Seven Wonders Duel, Castles of Burgundy, the card game, and Jaipur. So some that we've talked about already. I am really intrigued by Castles of Burgundy, the card game, mostly because the board game is fantastic.
Yeah, I was going to say Castles of Burgundy is very popular among all of us.
Yeah, we all like that one a lot.
To be honest, I actually didn't realize there was a Castles of Burgundy card game out there. Yet another game that has made my list. Scott mentions Dice Throne. So I've played the Marvel's Dice Throne, and Doug, you've talked about your enjoyment of Dice Throne.
Yeah, and Dice Throne Adventures. So Dice Throne comes in a season 1 and a season 2. And after they did season 1, when they were doing the season 2 boxes, they remastered season 1 so that it all kind of matches. So you can have these really nice sort of double box sets on your shelf. So I have all of the season 1 and all of the season 2. And then they did Dice Throne Adventures, where you can, instead of taking those characters and going head to head, there are rules for 3 and 4 players. I think most people just play it as a 2-player game. So you can take those characters, and instead of going head to head, you turn it into a co-op with up to 4 players, where everyone picks one of those characters and you're basically turning the game into a dungeon crawl. And the execution on it's really good. It doesn't make a lot of thematic sense, but I would actually really like to try that with the Marvel Dice Throne characters. Because it is compatible, you can take the Marvel characters through Dice Throne Adventures.
Yeah, I would like to try it too.
David has suggested Star Realms. This is a game that Richie owns and introduced me to a while back. He and Porter play it a lot, and it's a really good one.
Yeah, I've played a ton of this with my daughter Ashley because there's the app rendition of it. Travis chimed in and mentioned that Hero Realms, which is a variation of it, which goes up to 4 players. I kind of like it still at a 2-player level. This is one that kind of lost its shine with me, but a game that I've played a ton of.
Hero Realms, we've also played a lot of at Richie's house. There's a really cool campaign mode for it that is awesome.
Yeah, one of my old game groups, we played through both part 1 and 2 of that campaign.
Alan, who I used to work with, mentioned Dice Thrones, Unmatched, Patchwork, Watergate, and Hero Realms. Now, Watergate, I'm not familiar with. I'd have to look that one up.
Watergate sounds really intriguing to me. The theme for Watergate is it's basically the press versus President Nixon when he was undergoing the Watergate scandal. It is a 2-player head-to-head. You either play as Nixon or you play as the journalists. And I have heard nothing but good about that game. Probably the only reason I haven't picked that one up is just because 2-player games don't hit my table as much as I wish they did.
Well, another game that's made my list. This is worse than the news.
One of our good friends, Dustin, mentions Azul, Queen's Garden, Castles of Burgundy, Wingspan, and he specifically mentions the Asia standalone expansion, as well as Lost Cities Roll and Write, Marvel Champions, Copenhagen, Fox in the Forest, Fugitive, Mindbug, Parks, Spirits of the Wild, and Tussie Mussy. That's a hefty list.
That is a big list of 2-player games. Lost Cities Roll and Write is one that we just got introduced to at BryceCon, one that I've had for a little bit, pulled it off the shelf. That was an exceptional game that got played a lot by my wife. Doug, your kids played the heck out of that.
My kids loved it.
My wife loved it as well. She played it a ton.
Yeah, so Lost City's rolling right, not necessarily a 2-player game, but plays very well at a 2-player game. And then, of course, we've already talked about regular Lost Cities.
I love that he threw some of these in here, and we don't have enough time to unpack all of them. Marvel Champions, awesome as a 2-player game. Fox in the Forest, as well as Fox in the Forest Duet, I think both do some really interesting things as trick-taking games. Fugitive is great. I've played Parks 2-player with my wife a lot. That's an awesome one. And Tussie Mussie's actually really good too. That's another Elizabeth Hargrave design that she did for Button Shy Games. And the theme of that is based around the idea that flowers have meaning. And so you play your cards out in front of you and try to score points based on how well you can put your bouquet of flowers together.
Copenhagen's a really good game, and the Copenhagen Roll and Write is also very good. Ken mentions Small World, very solid game.
Elizabeth gave a shout out for Patchwork.
And Sharik mentions Dragon Bridge as well as Star Wars Imperial Assault. Ah, Sharik, this is an interesting one. Oh man, Star Wars Imperial Assault as a 2-player game. Nathan, you and I have talked recently about our love for Star Wars Imperial Assault. I don't know if we've talked a lot about it on the podcast, but just you and I in casual conversation. Would this work as a 2-player game?
I think if you're playing it with the app and using it as the fully cooperative, otherwise, I think if you have one player playing the Empire and one player playing the Rebellion, I would think that it would be very overwhelming for the Empire, unless the Rebel player is playing 4 characters, which...
Well, you get the action token, so they would just get all 4.
I guess, yeah.
They would get all 4
all 4
activations, so they could play as one player, but they would go after every single time. Ooh, balance-wise and everything. That's super intriguing. I'd be curious to see how that plays.
We should put that to the test.
We really should. I like that. Okay, Imperial Assault. We're going to put it to the test.
We are running really short on time, so we're going to kind of rapid fire through some of these, but Cade mentioned Grand Austria Hotel and Coimbra.
Douglas mentions Curious Cargo.
And Aisha mentions Seven Wonders Duel, Radlands, which I gave some love to on one of our previous 2-player game episodes, Spellcaster, Dice Miner, Imperial Harvest, Tides of Madness, and Glyph.
There's a couple more games there that need to go on my list too. Phineas mentioned in 104 Days of Summer, he can play Star Realms, Hero Realms, Patchwork, Onitama, Seven Wonders Duel, and Shot and Totten. Becky mentions Azul again.
And Jeff mentions Skulk Hollow, which is one of those games that I would love to revisit. I played it once, and it has fantastic components and a really cool theme. This is kind of a big guardian versus a clan of foxes, and it has some really unique gameplay. Good pick, Jeff.
Colleen suggests Lost Cities, Spirits of the Wild, Seven Wonders Duel, Wingspan, and Isle of Cats.
We have officially run out of time, and there are so many games that we didn't mention. It's a Wonderful Kingdom, Star Wars Rebellion, Potion Explosion. I can go on, but we're just playing out of time. We appreciate the feedback, and we are sorry we couldn't get to everyone. We are so very grateful for this time to chat with you and to be exposed to some of those games that you enjoy, and to add some games to my list of 2-player games that will be on my shelf so that I can experience and share in that joy with you.
We really do appreciate all the feedback. If you'd like to see all the rest of the comments that we were not able to get to, go visit our Facebook page and also the group's page on SaltCon.
Yeah, so this list is going to end up costing Nathan some money when he starts pursuing some of these games. Until next time.
We'll see you on the opposite side of the table playing those 2-player games.
As always, we want to thank you for listening.
Check out our website. We have all sorts of cool things there. Love those blogs. Get a deeper look into the writing side of Meeple Nation.
Join our Facebook group, Meeple Nation Off Air. I look forward to seeing you there.
Follow us on Twitter @MeepleNation. We also have Instagram.
Under the same name. We also want to thank our sponsor, GameToppersLLC.com.
We love their product, and they have so much goodness out there.
And we also want to thank Braden Detergent for our music.
I don't like the microphone on this side.
Do you want to just turn that thing off? Is it like a magic carpet ride?
Am I left mouthed? Is that what it means?
Yeah. Good to know. Do you chew with the left side of your jaw?
I don't know. I'll have to pay attention to that now.
That's awesome.
We should push that cricket button so we can hear everybody else. Oh.
That's the wrong one.
How long does it go?
Wow, that's a long sound.
Yeah, my favorite is Seven Architects.
Yep, 7 Architects. My favorite's 7 Brides for 7 Brothers.
Passing between each other. Of course, they're passing them between each other, you moron.
Is that staying in?
No, but probably make it to the end. And don't tap the table again.
Oh,
My bad. Thank you. Thank you for the kind reminder, Nathan.
the gentle reminder.
You like those fingers, Doug?
You like those fingers, Doug?
Good call. Good call.
Start saying, hey, we're running out of time. Seriously?
Can you hear me over Nathan's alarm, Doug?
It's my mom calling.
I can.
You can?
How you
Guess I
doing,
better
Dave?
Make sure she isn't falling. Hello. Reverend Johnson mentioned cribbage.
Reverend Jonathan.
Reverend Johnson.
Hey, watch your language. You're
I know,
talking
shouldn't
about a man
curse
on the
about
clock.
the Reverend.
Seriously, Mom.
Don't you know I'm trying to spittle on the microphone? That's what I'm trying to do.
Mom, we're on high alert. I almost killed you right then.
That's one of them. Yep.
Never mind.
Good.
Phineas revisits what?
You were trying to say Phineas and Ferb.
You were. Admit it.
And Scott and Totten.
Shot and Totten.
I'm not sure why I held up my hands like that, but I did.
And we really do appreciate, and we really do appreciate.